This is the Historic District Commission. It is November 10th, 2022. The time is 4:15. This meeting was noticed in the Fairfield Citizen Friday, October 28th. I guess we'll take attendance. I'll go around. Shay, I believe, is absent today. Ring the lock.
Here.
Thank you. Rosina Negron.
Here.
Art Cravanis.
Art's here.
Thank you. George Clark.
George is here.
Thank you. Jim Bohan.
Here.
Elizabeth Stack.
I am here.
And I am Adam Fiber, Commissioner. The alternate sequence is Stack, Bohan, Clark. So we have 4 commissioners. There'll be 1 alternate for first 3 applications, and then 2 for the final one, because Rosina is going to be recusing herself. So the first application is Alyssa, second is Jim Bohan, third Clark, and last Stack Bohan. All right. So the first item on the agenda is Kyle and Alana Griswold, 298 Harbor Road in Southport, for property located at 298 Harbor Road in Southport. Applications for a proposed landing and stairs, modified stone wall.
Good afternoon. This is Jack Franzen here. I'm representing the Griswolds, and I'm going to I'd like to share my screen if I could. Okay, so we're talking about 298 Harbor Road. We're proposing changes to this area on the north side of the house. This would have been part of the last application, but we didn't have a up-to-date survey, so we couldn't get it stamped by Matt Decker, in time to put this on the plans. The existing access from the driveway into the house, unless you go into the garage, is through these steps. There's existing steps here. And the steps that are there currently, we got pictures of them. You can see them. They're only 3 feet wide. They're very narrow. So it's awkward because 2 people can't even pass. Or if you're carrying groceries or whatever, it's hard to negotiate. And what we're proposing to do is to widen the steps so that they go all the way from the stone wall that's existing over to the corner of the garage. And they're going to be bluestone. They're going to have field stone risers. And then once you get up to the landing, there's an existing terrace here that'll be paved with bluestone. And then there'll be 3 more risers up to the porch. And we plan to eliminate there's now a railing with pickets that, to my eye, is very busy looking on the porch, and the railings on either side. Proposing to get rid of all that and just have a railing on the side next to the garage. And the railing will be wrought iron. It's going to look like this, typical of other railings that you see around Southport Village. Admittedly, a lot of this is really hard to see now because of the hedge that's there, and also the topography, because when you're down on Harbor Road, you're looking over this, there's a little hill here. But when you look straight at it from the driveway, I think it's going to be an improvement, not only in functionality, but in aesthetics. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Jack. Darren?
No questions. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
Zena?
No questions. Thank you.
None, Adam. Thank you.
Thanks, Art. George
Jack, no questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
and Jim. Jim Bohan, do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Melissa Stack, questions?
I don't have any questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And Jack, I do not have any questions.
Okay, I just forgot to mention this. We have to, obviously, to pour the footings, we have to open up the stone wall and it's going to go back just the way it is. It's all nice field stone.
Okay. Sounds good.
And that's it.
I did not receive any letters in favor of this application. I did not receive any letters opposing this application. So if there are no other questions, this hearing is closed. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is Rob and Carrie Manning, 1130 Old Academy Road in Fairfield for property located at 1130 Old Academy Road. For A, new pool and spa. B, new pool equipment. C, masonry wall and steps at pool area and terrace. D, outdoor fireplace. E, pergola. F, automated driveway gate, pedestrian gate and fence. G, repaved driveway. H, remove garden wall, steps, arbor to be relocated. I think you need to turn on your,
Got a mic issue.
no. We'll give Christina a minute to see if she can figure out her technical difficulties.
Is that working?
There you go. Okay,
All right. Okay.
thank you. Oh, you're muted again somehow.
Okay.
I
Is
hear
it
you
working now?
Yes. Don't touch
Okay.
it.
All right. Third time's a charm. I'm not touching a thing. Okay. So do you want me to start over?
Yeah, we didn't hear anything.
Okay. Okay. I am Christina Gates. I'm the landscape architect.
Hold on.
Oh, I can hear something else.
Yeah,
Working with Rob and Carrie Mann at their property at 1130 Old Academy. As Adam mentioned, we have several items that we are proposing improvements in the landscape. So I'm going to share my screen and pull up the application. Okay. So to get you situated, and I'll try to go through this quickly, a little bird told me that sometimes my presentations might be a little long, so I'll try to be quick tonight. This is the property. Their home is located on the corner of Dunham Road and Old Academy. Sorry if you hear banging in the background. There's someone with a nail gun and I can't get them to stop. If it's bothering you, just let me know. So the property is located on the corner of Old Academy and Dunham Road. Most of the improvements are behind the home and are exposed more to the view of the public way from Dunham Road. So that's kind of where I situated all the items that I wanted to present. So photos of the home, I'm sure most people have been out there. This is the front from Old Academy showing some existing photos. And then this slide shows the rear yard where we're proposing the pool and masonry walls and the other items that Adam laid out. So to start, I wanted to start with the pool. Down at the bottom of the screen, this area would be Dunham Road, and the right-hand side would be Old Academy. We are proposing a pool with a bluestone coping set in lawn and a spa, which would be raised up 2 feet on this upper terrace level. The pool and spa would have pool equipment, which is also an item on the application, would be located up here in the left-hand corner of the screen, hidden behind an existing little shed, and I'd put some evergreen planting in front of it. But again, this is almost 200 feet from Dunham Road, so pretty hidden and pretty far back. So let's see, images of pool. This is a little rendering. It's kind of a little bit easier to see than the AutoCAD. We tried in the design to minimize the amount of masonry that we were using on the property because they really enjoy the gardens that they have. So we have a terraced area here with some masonry steps and steps going down the side. And then you'll see this Tanner line is the masonry walls. We've created 3 different levels. So there's an upper level here at their new side entrance, and it slopes down to this mid-level where the seating area by the outdoor fireplace would be. And the spa itself would be situated on that upper level, so it can be used longer than the pool area. And then you walk down 2 feet, 4 risers, into the pool area where there would be a pergola at the end. I didn't draw the pergola in this one, but I can show it to you, and I have details. And then we tried to use grass and bluestone curb risers, again, to minimize the amount of masonry and keep as much lawn as possible. So these surrounding walls, for the most part, are about 2 feet high in this zone, and then they get higher here, and I can show you those elevations. For more detail on that, I have a grading plan that's in the application, and we can review that if you have any questions. This is an image. It's similar pergola that I've detailed, but I also pulled up this image because it does show what the bluestone pool in the lawn would look like. I don't think you can see it from the road, but for purposes of the application, I included it just so you knew what we were proposing. And then I included this image as well, as it shows kind of how a spa can be situated. This is 1.5 feet, but it's similar condition where the spa is just a little bit elevated from the pool area. And it also shows an image of what those bluestone and grass steps would look like. And over here, it shows full depth bluestone and stepping stones, which are all part of the design. Some of the site studies I did in designing this, and after meeting with some of the commissioners, we were really trying to work hard to keep the masonry walls as low as possible. And in doing so, we picked the grades on the site to try to work with to situate the pool height and then also the spa and the fireplace. One of the big challenges, and I discussed this with a few commissioners, was the wall condition right here and how it met this elevation. I wanted it to be safe, and that's why I've made this wall here 2.5 feet, and we have a little bench here. I just don't want anybody sitting on the wall and falling off the backside. So that's why it's detailed as such. As much as I would like it to be completely low, I think it creates a nicer space for the outdoor fireplace area. And then going back to the pergola, this is kind of an image, but I did do another elevation looking north. And this is kind of what the pergola would look like. And in this section elevation, it shows how the walls are quite small. So this is the level up by the barn, and you step down 2 feet, and then you have the pool area, and then you step down 2 feet to the main lawn on their property. And I tried to keep the level, it's just like a 3-inch curve here on that side. And then these are kind of typical dimensions of a pergola. This is pretty similar to one that was designed on a meeting house, and it would be cedar and similar in appearance to that. Let's see. Here are some other elevations of the pergola. This would be the view from Dunham Road, would be this side elevation. And I tried to give scale and kind of, it's all detailed, the sizing numbers. And then one of the larger portions of the application is the masonry. And so I did try to focus a lot of the design on this section of the masonry as it's the largest piece. And as I mentioned in, when we were discussing the spa area, you can see there's a very thin gray line here, and that's the bench on the interior. And that's why I gave it a foot here so someone could comfortably sit on it and it wouldn't be a danger. And then the lawn area and the planting area in front of this would slope up, and I'd have 2 trees. And I was thinking of planting it out with rhododendron and kind of larger hydrangeas. So it wouldn't be completely exposed, but obviously I'm presenting it as the masonry wall like this. And then I drew kind of it next to the scale of the home. There's a dining porch right here. And that's another reason for wanting to keep this outdoor fireplace in this space so that the dining and then the other kind of outdoor dining space related to one another. The fireplace itself is about 6 feet wide, and from the top of the wall, it's 8 feet 2 inches, and the overall is about, where's the other elevation? 10 feet 8 inches. It has some vents here. In some of the research I did, putting a cap on the top helps prevent the water from flowing into it. Here's some images. I do not like this fireplace, okay? This is not the masonry style that we are suggesting, or kind of this kind of cap condition. It's all, shown in there. But what it does show is the kind of rounded sides, and it shows this little bench condition, which is a little bit difficult to explain. So I wanted to show that's why I have that wall a little bit higher. And then it shows how the vents really do protect that area. And then the most important part of that component of the application, obviously, is the masonry style. So I pulled up some images from the neighborhood in different masonry styles. This bottom left-hand image is from the Manning's home, and it has a lot of irregular stones, a lot of angles, and this beautiful lichen growing on it. And then there's some other walls that are equally as beautiful on Bronson Road, the cemetery, and their neighbors. And I think they all have a similar kind of tone to them. And so then I tried to pull up some other images that I thought also had a similar feeling for masonry styles. So we're really trying to work within that. When I was drawing the detail on the wall, I used this image and this image and this image to kind of get a good mixture of this, which isn't quite so irregular. I think this might be very hard to recreate. And so I was trying to find something that I thought that these three really spoke to kind of this historic masonry language. Okay, so let's see. We went through the outdoor fireplace, the pergola, the masonry walls, and the steps. Just want to make sure I went through the steps with you. So we have steps here, which are the bluestone curb steps here. These are the full depth bluestone curbs, full depth bluestone by the spa, and then there's full depth bluestone over here. So those are the 4 places where we have steps. And then the automated gate. Okay. So in order to put a pool in, we have to upgrade the driveway gate because it swings in and it needs to swing out for pool code. And there are a lot of reasons why it has to be replaced. So we've designed a new driveway gate. In the beginning, this top hand picture shows the existing gate, which my client doesn't really care for. So we were looking to bring something in that spoke to the railings and the architecture of the home and mixed wood and metal. So we designed this gate, which is wood, but it has the metal picket coming down. And I did a small rendering to kind of show you what it might look like from the road. This is kind of my overlay of what that gate would look like in the distance. And we were thinking it would be painted kind of a dark dark gray or a black, and it has the black picket. So it really kind of you can kind of see through it, and it wouldn't be like a bright white gate or anything like that. But it had a little bit more heft than that metal, their existing metal gate. So, and this gate also is it's over 100 feet from the road, so it's not terribly close. And that's another reason why we liked kind of beefing up the framing of the design a little bit so that you could really read it a little bit better and it was a little bit more elegant. So that is the driveway gate. The dimensions are, I have it at about 6 feet high here in the center, but it gets lower to about 5 feet 3 inches. There's a matching pedestrian gate on the left. That's what the garbage man uses to access their garbage area on the left. And let's see, it's pretty tight. The post would just connect right here. There's an existing wire in the arborvitae, so we would just connect to that. And then the last item, H, is some removal. So to install this project, we would need to remove some of these stones, well, all of them, this little water feature, and these steps, and this little arbor to put the pool in. And if you look on my site plan, I've relocated this arbor, and I have places for stepping stones. And I'd love to try to reuse as much of this material as possible as stepping stones around the property. So we wouldn't throw it out. We would stockpile it and try to use what makes sense. Some of the places I have some stepping stones here. I have some stepping stones here, and this is where I've relocated that little arbor. So right now the arbor is right over here where you see my cursor. So we would just be moving it over, and it would go in that space. It just would be a garden gate. It wouldn't have a gate, sorry, it would just be a pass through. And so then that brings me to the second to last, which is the paving of the driveway. I foresee with all this construction, if this were to be approved, that they would likely need to repave the entire driveway. So we are, removing a whole portion back here. It's a circular driveway, and this cherry tree is dying. So that would all get minimized, and we're trying to reduce the asphalt. So this would just be a smaller driveway courtyard area that would get repaved. Only a portion of it would be visible, but I just wanted to include that as well. So I think that is it. And I don't think I missed anything. We've got retaining walls here. And I think that's it. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Okay, thank you, Christina. Rosina, would you like to start?
I don't have any questions at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, Art, questions?
None for me, Adam. Looks good, Christina.
Thank you. George? You're muted, George. Questions?
Excuse me, sorry, I was muted. Christina, in your drawings, I don't see any lighting. Are there step lightings any place in the masonry?
I haven't done the lighting yet. That's a good question. We would come back for the lighting at a later date. I think right now we were just focusing on trying to see if we could get this process started, and then I would come back for lighting and anything else that maybe we add or remove to this scope. But yes, lighting will be forthcoming.
Okay, no, thank you. I think it's a very nice plan. It's a beautiful piece of property.
Okay. Yes, it's really pretty. Thank you.
George, Jim, questions?
I don't think I'm voting on this one, Adam.
You can ask questions though if you're not voting on it. You just can't talk about it during the executive session.
How will the pool and its occupants be screened from Dunham Road?
The pool, I'll pull up this site plan. This portion of Dunham Road, there's a wall, and if you look at the topography, it actually drops off. It goes from 216 to 214, and we're down to 212. So when you're driving, you're already 4 feet below the wall, and this is higher. So that's part of the screening process, but aside from that, there's this dotted line along here, and that shows there's a very, very dense planting along the whole property. The surveyor only, put in a couple trees, but this whole edge has very dense planting. And there are some spots where we're going to be moving rhododendron, and we might beef up some areas because the client certainly doesn't want to see cars as much as cars don't want to see into their property.
Right.
So there's a dense planting already there, but we're going to add some more planting as well. And it's pretty deep. It's
Someone
almost
standing in
12
the
feet
pool.
deep.
Someone standing
Sorry?
in the pool will not be visible from Dunham Road and vice versa.
No, well, I guess it's subjective, but yes, you will be. That's why I presented it. So I think if you're driving by and someone was standing out here, you could probably see them. If you were to, try to find a hole in the planting or something, you could probably see them. But it's pretty dense.
Okay. Thank you.
I hope that answered your question. We are adding more planting along that edge, but I have to assume that there is no planting and that it would be appropriate if there wasn't planting. But we are going to beef up the planting regardless.
Good job. It's an absolutely beautiful piece of property.
It is.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jim. Alyssa, questions?
I don't have any. Thank you very much.
And Darren, questions?
No questions for me, thanks.
Thank you. And I do not have any questions either. Christina, I did not receive any letters in favor of this application. I did not receive any letters opposing this application. So, the hearing's over. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is Eric and Heather Mayland, 1386 Hillside Road in Fairfield, for a property located at 1386 Hillside Road in Fairfield for replace existing non-original 20th century windows painted with thermal paint windows with simulated violet lights.
Hi, everybody. I'm John Wazalewski. I'm with David Scott Parker Architects, and I'm representing my clients, Eric and Heather Mayland. And I'm going to go ahead and share screen. Great. Okay. I'm sure you're all familiar with the property, 1386 Hillside Road. As we've discussed in previous applications, the house has evolved over a number of different additions and expansions and repairs over the last 150 plus years. Most of the windows were in the house now are 20th century. Number of the ones we're looking at are not very good quality. They're certainly the ones that were done in this edition in the 80s, a lot of those are Brosco windows, single pane, true divided light. There are others that are early 20th century, from the 20s perhaps. There are some older 1830s windows, particularly on the first floor. Those we are not touching. There are these windows in these bays that are probably originally from the 30s, which were, I believe, replaced in the late 90s or early 2000s. We're not touching those. We're also not touching any of the French doors on the house. But let me show you what we are doing. Or I'll give you some, sorry. These are some photos of the existing, and you can see various qualities of windows here. In this case, these just have that sort of spring track from like you see in a Brasco window, and I think actually those are Brasco. These have that sort of metal tape. This one, I think, has a spring mechanism. There are some, again, I think there are no old pulleys or chains or ropes that are left, but it's a bit of a mishmash. The client would like, some of them are in bad shape, a number of them are in bad shape, they're not terribly energy efficient. They are interested in putting in something that is consistent, sensitive to what had previously or was originally there, and certainly more energy efficient than what's there. This set of photos illustrates around the house which windows are proposed to be replaced, and these are all indicated in red and counted. These are all double hung windows that we're proposing to change, and they would all be similar in quality. Again, all these down here, I think most of these are Brasco that were done in the 80s. A lot of these were replaced at the time that we did this pergola addition. We're not changing any of these here. These long windows on the first floor, we believe those are probably from the 1870s. Those are not changing. But one thing that we are changing, all of these casements, fixed casements on this breezeway. That breezeway was done, I think, early 80s. Certainly it was right before we started working on the house. It's actually been rebuilt several times. So there's two different types of windows that we're looking at doing. One is a wood casement with a simulated divided light, and the other is, wood casement with a simulated divided light on the breezeway here and here. And then everywhere else would be a wood double hung simulated divided light thermal paint. And these are those details. So these are a Marvin Ultimate wood window. It's an all wood window. It is painted inside and out. This is what the spacer bar looks like. It is a 5/8 inch muntin with a spacer, and then outside it has the appearance of a putty glaze. That would be consistent on both the double hung windows and the casements. I don't think when I originally submitted, I think I just had the detail for the double hung, but I threw in the fixed casement details as well. And I would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, John. Art, let's start, please.
None for me, Adam.
Okay, George?
No questions for me, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Jim Bohan, you have questions? Jim?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alyssa, is that questions?
I don't have any, thanks.
Okay. And Darren, questions?
Just one quick question. Hi, John.
Hi, Darren, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm well,
Could
thank
you
you.
go back to A1, please? So on photograph 5,
A1.
the lower left window isn't being replaced. Is that where the kitchen bump out is going, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, here. That is correct. Right here. Yeah, so this window here is where the kitchen bay expansion is happening, and then this window here is changing from a single to a mold, a double window. So they are being replaced. They're just they've been previously approved in the last application, and are not part of this application.
Right.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I remembered the placement correctly.
Yeah,
That was my
sorry,
only question. Thanks so much.
Yeah, no, sure. In a perfect world, I would have brought every one of these things to you in a single application. So I appreciate your patience and return visits,
Not a problem at all. Thank you so much.
of course.
Thank you. Rosina?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, I do not have any questions either, John. I did not receive any letters in favor of this application. I did not receive any letters opposing this application, so hearing is closed. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Next application is David and Tina Montani, 920 Old Post Road in Fairfield for property located at 920 Old Post Road in Fairfield. To A, remove existing shed and basketball court. Actually, that item was already approved at the last time they came in front of us, so we don't have to hear that line item. B, construct new single-family house and detached garage. C, install new asphalt driveway. D, install new fence along front property. E, install new brick stoop and walkways. And F, install new AC condensing units.
Hello, everybody. Brian St. Pierre here speaking on. Oh, go ahead, Rosina.
And Rosina's
I'm recusing myself, so yes.
Thank you.
Again, everybody, hi. Brian St. Pierre here speaking on behalf of David and Tina Montani. Thank you all for taking the time to hear this application again. I know we left off, we've been here a bunch of times now, and we left off really with a request for additional information and additional documents and some clarification on the drawings that were provided. But I do want to go obviously back and retouch on some of the major items and kind of walk through the application as a whole, rather than just do the what was requested. So let me try and share the screen here. Okay, can everybody see the site plan? I think I got it there. Okay. So again, we're here to propose the construction of a new two-story one single-family home on the property of 920 Old Post Road with a detached two-car garage. I was going to start with the removal of the shed and the basketball court, but I thank you for reminding me, Adam, that that's already been approved, so we can move on to the house. Some basic details on the house. As I mentioned, two-story home, single family. The overall square feet is roughly 2,300 square feet total. So in terms of today's standards and certainly Fairfield standards, a very modest house, nothing egregious. Touching on I'll get down here, elevation, some of the significant features of the house, and obviously why we're in front of you is the historic nature of the new home. Will be constructed with basically the standards of what a historic home had. In other words, mostly mainly wood features. For instance, the siding on this new home is your standard cedar clapboard, 6 inches to the weather, with corner boards that are 4-inch cedar boards. The windows are Pella Architect Series windows. These are historically accurate windows, actually sanctioned by the National Historical Society and recognized as a historic window. And we'll be constructing these with historic sills and the addition of wood shutters on either side. And I believe there are details of both in the application itself. The shingles are going to be an asphalt 3-tab shingles. They're a GAF Royal Sovereign slate color. I believe we have that in our, I know that's in the documents, but I believe we also added it to the rendering, so you can see the color there. We also are proposing on this home a new front porch to encase the front door. The columns, as we've gone over in the past, are custom wood columns to be constructed on site. and they will sit on a stone stoop or a brick stoop that will have Chicago used brick as the base and the the surrounding areas. The front door for this home is a Simpson mahogany wood door with simulated divided light. It's a all wood door with matching side lights. One of the items that was requested in the last meeting was a view of the garage itself. This is the detached garage that will be located on the back side of the property. Not very visible at all from the street, but we wanted to give you an idea of what that would look like in the meantime. Standard 2-car garage, single story. They'll have the wood reserve doors, mahogany doors, and those will be stained the wood color. Above each door, we're proposing 2 lights. They are basically a gooseneck light, and there's a detail in the application here, but they're a 14-inch shade, and they have about a 10-inch gooseneck going back to the building itself, so they'll stick off the home roughly, or I'm sorry, off the garage roughly 10 inches. Also included in here, we have some overhang details. Just to give you an idea of what the crown and the detail would look like for the overhang. It's your standard, what I'll call early American detail with the return and a crown molding on your fascia. We're also proposing half-round gutters that will be located along the front of the home. If you see my screen here, along the front 2 sides here, and I've also located the downspouts on the floor plans, but there'll be a downspout in this corner here along the side, and then another downspout down on this side, the right side of the house. Here. So touching on some of the things that were requested of us, obviously one was the front facade of the garage, what that would look like. And also one of the main things was obviously the location of the home and how it sits and situates itself with the streetscape and how it fits in with the neighborhood. So painstakingly, we went through and made this rendering of a view looking down Old Post Road towards town center. For purposes of showing what the home and the location is, we've removed in this particular rendering all the trees to give you an idea of how far back the house at 920 Old Post Road will sit in relation to the historic home next door. The real view that you will have will be this one, because these trees along the streetscape are town owned, and we are not able to take those down. But I did want to give you guys a good idea of the location of this home in relation to the homestead next door, and obviously the garage of neighboring properties and how it sits into the neighborhood. So this is obviously, like I said, a view to show you what it is. This is what the view actually will be as you're looking down Old Post Road towards town center. One of the other views that we were asked to give is basically a straight on view and how it relates to the 2 properties next door. I believe I had this rendering in one of the previous applications, but we had to adjust it for the removal of the front gable that we had. So this is a view. It shows you obviously the proportions and how it fits in relationship to the home next door. Again, this was with the removal of all the trees, just to give you an idea of the overall effect. This is actually the view because we have 1, 2 trees that are situated in front of the Montani's house. And then lastly, we did a rendering, a view of the overall house itself, just to give you a little bit more detail on how the house will look. Part of the application, and I'll stay here with this, is the addition of the brick walkways. So we're going to have a brick walkway that leads from the front door to the sidewalk, and that will be made out of the used Chicago brick. In addition, we're proposing a front fence across the front of the property. I know we've went over this before too, but I have drawing detail on this page here, page A3 of the fence detail. And again, just to reiterate, this is similar to the fences that line Old Post Road to begin with. They will be constructed all of wood, and matching, kind of in like with what's there in the neighborhood. The driveway, go back to the site plan here. We're proposing obviously a new driveway for the home, and it will be located on the left-hand side of the property. Oops, sorry. It will be located on the left-hand side of the property, coming in along the side of the new home, back to the garage with a little turnaround. This will be an asphalt driveway, black paved, as as every other house on the street has, basically. And then the last item is the AC units, which I believe isn't even an issue. The two AC units are proposed for the back side of the house here. They're in the back corner, not visible from the street, but we decided we would leave them in anyway. And I believe that's it for the details of the home. And again, I'm more than happy to talk about the additional details and documents that we provided you guys, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, Adam.
Do you want to start? You muted, George?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay. Jim, question?
No questions, Adam. Thank you.
Alyssa, questions?
No questions, thanks.
Okay. Darren, questions?
No questions, thanks.
Rosina, questions?
She's recused.
Oh, sorry, jeez. There she is. Art, questions?
None for me, Adam. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. I do not have any questions. I'm pretty familiar with this project. I do not have any letters in favor of this application, but I do have a few letters opposing the application. The first letter I'll read is from Jack Franzen. It's very small, so let's see if I can read it. Dear Commissioners, this application came to my attention by means of Old Post Road neighbors who remember that I designed a home at 965 Old Post Road. I reviewed the plans and feel that the applicant should explore two options that would avoid placing the proposed house so close to the street. Other homes on this street are set back, I believe, about 40 feet or more feet from the street, with the exception of two pre-revolutionary houses. I believe the proposed placement of the new home at this site will distract from the spatial context of the existing home at 952 Old Post Road. It will also disrupt the wall of continuity implied by the newer homes on both sides of the street. See attached Fairfield GIS image. Given the unusual shape and size of the property at 920, why not ask relief from ZBA? If granted, it would not be the first time that the board has seen hardship as a reason to allow placement of a home consistent with historical land use patterns. One other option would be to try to acquire additional property or swap property to create a more usable shape of lot. My suggestion would be to deny the application without prejudice until the approved above options and fully explored. I also strongly recommend that the proposed site plan be amended to show at least the southerly wall of the home at 952 Old Post Road by omission of this contextual information. The current site plan in the packet can be misleading. when I was working for the client across the street, I never considered breaking the regimen created by the homes at 981, 953, 931, and 915 Old Post Road. And on the next letter is from Alexis Harrison, Chairperson Clyber, and members of the Historic District Commission. Fairfield Protecting Land and Neighborhoods Fair Plan is writing you to take the utmost care in reviewing this application regarding property located in the Old Post Road Historic District. We also urge the commission to require full information and materials so that they can be fully informed before you decide whether to issue a certificate of appropriateness on this application. Fair Plan's mission is to support open spaces, natural resources, and the character of our neighborhoods. For over 20 years, Fair Plan has worked in earnest to protect the spirit of our heritage in Fairfield, whether it's from an environmental or building scale perspective. Fair Plan supports the Historic District Commission's mission, which carries out important public policy and is set forth in your handbook. The work of the Historic District Commission is carrying out national policy, state statute, and local ordinance is intended to preserve the qualities to have come to characterize our town over its long history and to ensure that those qualities be carried into the future. Residents in the Old Post Road Historic District have expressed concern of the efforts to allow a significant decrease in the setback for this parcel, which would be far closer to the sidewalk than other district properties. It appears this would have an adverse impact on the district. It also would set the precedent for degrading the district going forward, as owners of other parcels may seek similar accommodation. Any lack of enforcement of the district design standards could also be used in either court cases or legislative initiatives to support further intrusion on the district on the basis that district is already being diminished voluntarily. We urge you to deny the application that does not strictly conform to the intent and purpose of the Connecticut State's General State Statutes 7-147 and the Fairfield Historic District Commission Handbook. For yours truly, yours, Alexis Harrison, Co-Chair of Fair Plan. And the next letter from Jennifer Andresen. Dear Mr. Clyber, I'm writing the commission again regarding the fifth submission by the applicants for a new build at 920 Old Post Road. The latest submission appears to be the same, similar to the fourth submission, so it's unclear what has really changed in this application compared to the fourth submission. As stated in my previous letters from neighbors, and a petition signed by many Old Post Road Association members of the community, as well as local politicians, this proposed home does not meet the specifications laid out in the HCC handbook. A few examples, but certainly not all the full list. Number one, the proposed home, 920 Old Post Road, is 46 feet, 6 inches wide, and the home next door is 28 feet wide, 952 Old Post Road. This house is 40% wider, direct neighbor. This significantly affects the streetscape. Two, precedence has already been set setbacks of new build on Old Post Road. 965 Old Post Road fits with the setbacks on the street as cited in the diagram provided in the petition signed by many neighbors. This proposed setback significantly affects the streetscape. Style of the home does neither meet HCC handbook specification nor matches colonial style. This home has some features of a colonial home. See page 38. 9 HCC handbook. It is missing the core features such as a straight cross roof line. This home looks like there is an extension added on. This home should have a straight roof line and not a dip down like an extension like 91 and 965 Old Post Road rebuild and any other colonial on Old Post Road. There are 6 windows across on the second floor and 5 windows across on the first floor. I have not seen this style anywhere in the Fairfield Historic Districts. Colonials on this street, 965 new build and 981 Old Post Road, have the traditional center hall colonial windows, 5 across on the second floor, 4 on the bottom floor, 2 on each side of the front door. These windows should match the home's on the street and in the historic district. C, size of windows. The windows are not symmetrical. There's one window on each floor that is smaller than the rest. This does not match the colonial style as mentioned above. These windows should be removed and the rest of the windows should be realigned to match traditional center hall colonial style of our historic district. Historic district residents and HEC should not be unduly influenced to approve the building of this home as submitted 5 times because the owners purchased property prior to obtaining HEC's approval for the building and design of the proposed home. Historic district residents and the HEC are not responsible for finding a way for the homeowners on 20 Oak Post Road to be able to build what they want. Historic district homeowners take great pride in owning a piece of Fairfield history's. Each owner in the historic district decided to purchase a home here. We also agreed to follow HEC rules. We residents in the historic districts work very hard to preserve our properties and incur extra costs to maintain the historic appropriateness of our properties. The HEC approves the applicant's proposed home. The HEC will set a precedence. Owners of the historic properties in the town center, Southport, Greenfield Hill, may begin to subdivide and build new homes, which will forever change Fairfield historic districts. The proposal for this home is not in the spirit of preserving Fairfield's historic districts. HEC should not approve the build of a home that goes against everything the Historic District Commission HEC handbook have been created to protect. For all reasons stated in my letter, I urge you to deny this proposal with prejudice. I want to thank the Commission for all of your efforts and hard work on this application and all applications presented to you each month. I very much appreciate all that you do to keep the historic district's property special and protected places. These places tell our story as a community and make us proud of our town for generations of Fairfielders to come. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comment on this application. Best regards, Jennifer Andreessen, 981 Old Post Road. Next letter is from Johan Andreessen, the Historic District Commission members and Chairman Kleiber. I'm a Historic District area resident at 981 Old Post Road, and I'm writing in strong opposition to the proposed construction of a new home on a small lot at 920 Old Post Road. While I recognize some minor improvements to design has been made over the last several months, it remains in fact that the proposed development will have a significant negative impact on the property itself, which is currently a vacant lot, but more importantly on the surrounding buildings and immediate neighborhood because of the proposed massing size, scale, size, setback, etc., which are incongruous with the appearance of the immediate neighborhood. It's further detailed below. On that basis, and in accordance with the standards and guidelines established in the Historic District Commission handbook, the application for certificate of appropriateness should be denied. As you're looking to again deliberate on this proposal, I specifically draw your attention to the following. First, I find the Commission that the Historic District is a special place and protected by law that sets higher standards than the TPC, law that were specifically crafted to protect the character and longevity of historic places for future generations. In that context, allowing a new construction that includes a feature that looks like an extension seems egregious. While extensions on the historic homes have been granted, those have been reasonable accommodations in striking a balance between strict preservation and making the historic homes livable, creating an incentive for people to buy, own, and maintain the historic homes, which is a considerable expense compared to newer homes. There's absolutely no reason to consider the same type of accommodation for new construction. As I have stated in the past, it is possible to build a modest-sized home on this property that adheres to the character of the historic district, but instead, the developer keeps insisting on something that is too large, includes undesirable features such as something that looks like an extension. Why not cut out the extension part altogether? It would go a long way to make this fit with the neighborhood. Second, there's been some disturbing discussion among the committee prior submissions by the applicant for this property, whether setbacks is something the committee should even care about. I want to draw your attention to the fact that the setbacks is a criteria that should be evaluated, same as mass, bulk, and scale as per the handbook. While the applicant tries to argue that there are homes closer to the street, the fact is that those are pre-Revolutionary War buildings. Also, building a home closer to the street, a new home, will overpower adjacent structures and the streetscape at large and will not be in line with the deference criteria in that historic district handbook. Just because there are other houses in the district that are closer to the street doesn't mean that new construction should be allowed on that premise. Same goes for mass and bulk. Just because there are larger homes in the district, that doesn't mean that you can build a large house on what is a very small plot of land. Third, a point that has been made by the applicant that there's currently only a basketball court on the property and that a new home would be more appropriate. I find that preposterous. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that basketball hoops and the courts are very prevalent feature in the historic district and present at most historic homes. For most people, they're not even noticeable. To replace a basketball court with a large permanent new structure construction is obviously not in the best interest of preserving the historic district for future generations. Fourth, there was a mention in the last meeting reason this property that taking down the hedge at the property would improve the visibility of the Rowland House, Rowland Homestead. I draw your attention to the fact that greenery should be ignored by the committee. Fifth, the proposed house is situated in immediate proximity to Rowland Homestead, 952 Old Post Road, and appears to be as tall or taller, larger and much wider, while in the handbook requires the new construction to be of lower height and with less massing and bulk. The proposed massing, bulk, and width facing Old Post Road will diminish neighboring properties and will create what the handbook refers to as a sore thumb in the district, which states should be avoided. As such, I again call on the commission to deny the application for the certificate of appropriateness in order to protect and preserve the historic district against the excessive development contemplated at 920 Old Post Road. In addition to my writing testimony, I would also welcome the opportunity to speak at the upcoming hearing in November 10th. Best regards, Johann Andres. From Ann Cadis to the Historic District Commission, I write to express that I remain concerned about the unchanged setback of the proposed home at 920 Old Post Road and the size of the planned home compared to the size of the lot. The setback of the front of the home remains too small in comparison to the rest of the homes on this block. In fact, in addition to the small 30-foot setback, they have extended the front entryway to be less than 24 feet from the sidewalk. Such a setback is against the text and spirit of the historic district rules, will diminish the beauty and grandeur of the rest of the properties and will look like it's out of scale. Additionally, it will be a wrong precedent for the district. Sincerely, Ann Cadis. This is from the Old Post Road Area Association. Dear Commissioners, we, the board members of the Old Post Road Area Association, write to you with collective concerns from our neighborhood regarding the current application at 920 Old Post Road that is before you. I refer you to letters from Old Post Road Association sent to you January 11th and June 8th, 2022, as stated in the Town of Fairfield Historic District and Properties Handbook. The application must have a complete set of drawings to scale and a description of materials to be used. The sets must be complete, showing both existing and proposed conditions. The floor plans are inconsistent with the plot plan. Front elevation and the side elevation drawings. The front facade has features that are not consistent with the design of and architecture of the house. There is an alcove for one window on the front elevation that breaks up the lines of the house. The roof line on the front elevation does not seem to match what is shown on the floor plans or the south elevation drawing. The application shows a side of a gutter and specifies that they will be made of copper, but the drawings are inconsistent in where the downspouts will be located. Many neighbors are concerned about the 30-foot setback of the proposed house and that this will negatively affect the streetscape. As stated in the FHDC handbook, new buildings constructed on subdivided lot or on a lot that has not had buildings or structures since creation of the historic district shall be designed to retain as much as possible of the visual historic streetscape. Established rhythms in location, massing, height, and bulk of buildings and structures along the street should be maintained. I refer you to the letter sent to the commission on January 3rd from Mr. Richard Cunningham, 952 Old Post Road. This letter elegantly states why a 30-foot setback in the 920 Old Post Road application is not appropriate. HEC guidelines state new construction shall be designed so that the views from the public ways of existing buildings and structures are undiminished. This setback appears in Congress with the streetscape and other homes, with the exception of 952 Old Post Road. If the home at 920 Old Post Road is built with a front setback of 30 feet, it will compete with the historically significant Andrew Rowland home at 952 Old Post Road. Andrew Rowland home, which is on the National Register of Historic Places, dates back to 1768, and by its age, one would expect to be closer to the street. Proposed dwelling at 920 Old Post Road would be better aligned with the neighborhood streetscape if the front setback was increased to at least 45 feet. This would be in keeping with other properties within the surrounding streetscape. It would be important and useful if the commission requested artist renderings of the streetscape, proposed house, and its request setback of 30 feet to better illustrate its impact on the section of historic Old Post Road. We encourage you to deny this application without prejudice and allow landowner to return yet again to you with an appropriate application that addresses the above concerns. Thank you for your voluntary time and consideration. Sincerely, Ann Backey, President, 3D Old Post Road. Ms. Karen Wingett, Vice President, 458 Old Post Road. Ms. Stacy Famas, Secretary, 455 Old Post Road. And Mr. Walter Shaw, Treasurer, 487 Old Post Road. And the final letter from Richard Cunningham. Dear Ms. Claggett, we are writing you in opposition to the proposed construction of a new home and double garage on the subdivided lot at 920 Old Post Road. In a bid to push development to the limits of zoning regulation, this application shows deference to the context of the site itself. We were disappointed to learn that after denial of their prior submission, the applicants did not seize the opportunity in reconfiguring their design to accommodate the most material concern raised by neighboring households, namely the front setback. Setback does not conform with HGC guidelines. The proposed construction is directly adjacent to the Rowland Homestead, 952 Old Post Road, one of the 6 properties that survived the burning in Fairfield in 1779, and the only one not located on Beach Road. The envisaged new construction would eliminate the vista of the original main entrance of that historic property. The proposed 30-foot front setback for the new construction is non-conforming to customary setbacks along the short end of Old Post Road of 46 to 65 feet. The 2 exceptions to this rule, both grandfathered in pre-Revolutionary War edifices, the original side facades of which front what is now Old Post Road. Original main entrance faces the beach. Rowland Homestead, 952 Old Post Road, constructed in 1759. A Thorpe House, 1005 Old Post Road, originally constructed in 1756, rebuilt after the burning of Fairfield. HEC guidelines state new construction shall be designed so that the views from public ways of existing buildings and structures is undiminished to the extent possible. For example, new construction will often need to be lower height, less massing and bulk than existing buildings and structures. So that the view of these existing structures from public ways is protected. Similarly, street setbacks and lot placement should not necessarily mirror existing buildings and structures, but should be designed to protect the historic views of such existing buildings and structures. Finally, to the extent possible, design of the new buildings and structures should complement the historic character of the property in question. For example, if a building lot is created where a garden has historically existed, then a building with elements of a garden cottage retaining as much possible of the historic grounds would be more appropriate than a formal house with a large footprint. Exemptions to the HGC streetscape guidelines have not been granted in other similar cases, 965 Old Post Road, to ensure equity to avoid precedent setting and unintended future consequences, we would urge you to deny this application. Sincerely, and there are many names from the Old Post Road signed on here, which I can't read. Okay, so before we move on, is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this application? If not, is there anyone here who would like to speak against this application?
I'd like to speak against if I could. I believe there's one letter that has been omitted that I sent to you and actually lists the signatories to the last letter, which hopefully you'll notice, I believe is now over kind of 35
Yes,
kind of neighbors. So I don't know if you could add that in.
It was the email that you sent me.
Yes, I don't know if you could add the email into the notes as well.
Okay, I can do that. Would you care to speak?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can speak as well. So, thank you. I've spoken. I think this is now the 5th time. This application has now been running, I think, for over a year. I'm Richard Cunningham, owner of 952 Old Post Road. At this commission, I've previously spoken about the high visibility of the location, right in the heart of the historic district. Its importance to U.S. naval history, particularly as a garden, and the fact that this development would obscure the original front facade to the Ronan homestead, which was the location from which the alarm for the burning of Fairfield was raised. And I've also spoken about the fact that it is entirely possible to build on this lot in a way that would be compliant both with zoning regulations and with historic district guidelines. And that would indeed be a more moderate property, but the applicants have chosen now 5 times to submit plans that do not meet those guidelines. Through the sheer number of signatories and letters you've received, I believe the last letter had more than 35. You should note that the pushback this development is now well beyond direct neighbours. It includes the Old Post Road Area Association, Fair Plan. I believe we heard earlier from Mr. Franson, who was the architect for that property at 965 diagonally opposite, as well as neighbours from Old Post Road from both ends, and also a number of kind of adjacent streets. So why? Why is there now kind of neighbourhood level opposition to this development? Really 3 reasons. I think the first one, pretty obvious, the streetscape impact. Neighbours recognise the concerns around mass and setback, that the design is inappropriate and it would have a significant impact on the streetscape. The second concern, I think, on a neighbourhood level is around precedents. Embedded within this application is a request to change the precedent on setbacks, which has applied since the early 1700s. Sorry, since the early 1800s, late 1700s. And changing a precedent to which other modern developments were held, such as that property at 965 Old Post Road, which is diagonally opposite the site in question. There's a concern that deviating from these standards would be a slippery slope. And frankly, I don't think we know what the future consequences would be, but there is certainly a possibility that it would lead to future inappropriate development and possibly the encouragement thereof. And the third reason I think this has now become a neighborhood level concern is around governance. Neighbors have chosen to live here. They've bought properties in the historic district and have done so consciously. And part of that choice to live in a historic district is understanding the local governance. We all did diligence when we moved here, and we rely on it. We're here, so we rely on it. We take it seriously. So many neighbours, I think, frankly, are surprised this application wasn't rejected prima facie. It has considerable issues. The deviation from the guidelines are obvious. And in this case, we're not talking about a cosmetic change, about changes to fences or Belgian block on walkways. We're talking about putting an entire property in the wrong place. We're all stakeholders in the historic district. And this application is something that would impact streetscape, not just for the people that currently live here, but we're talking about for generations to come. And I'm hoping as commissioners that you will deny this application and demonstrate to local shareholders that the governance of our historic district functions and functions as intended. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak?
Yeah, Johan Andreasen, 981 Old Post Road. Yeah, I just on Rich's letter, since it was missing, there was, I believe it should have been read. It was the 34 signatures from Andrew and Liz Montelli on 205 Beach Road, Matt Wyant on 289 Beach Road, Jason and Christine Cool on 135 Old Post Road, Dylan Ed Vergara on 271 Old Post Road, Tara and Henry Backey on 388 Old Post Road, Christine and Niels Olsen on 401 Old Post Road, Justin and Rosalina Thomas on 415 Old Post Road, Stacy Fama 415 on 455 Old Post Road, Karen and William Wingett on 458 Old Post Road, Walton Johan Shaw on 487 Old Post Road, Peter Burnham on 698 Old Post Road, Chris Conciela on 953 Old Post Road, Carrie Gillespie Hine on 965 Old Post Road, Brian and Michelle Quinn on 970 Old Post Road, myself and my wife Jennifer at 981 Old Post Road, and then Peter Cades on 996 Old Post Road, Judith Fox on 1005 Old Post Road, David Haddad on 1038 Old Post Road, Brian Farnan on 394 Roland Road, Joel Green on 52 Stoneleigh Road, and Michael Doer on 47 West Morgan Avenue. So that was just for the record. I mean, I'm coming back to this, as I have said in all the meetings in the past, it's really frustrating that this keeps coming back. The house is too big. It's too close to the street. It's a new construction, which doesn't fit into the neighborhood. It's too close to one of the most pristine historic homes in the district, which is the Roland Homestead. There has been arguments about TPC and setbacks. Setbacks is as important as scale, mass, and size. You can always find a house that is closer to the street. You can find a bigger house. It's how and where it's situated in comparison to what is already there. There's nothing there at the moment, right? I think also, also the design has not changed materially. There was one iteration changed like a couple of months ago, but this is coming back, and as a neighbor, and it's why there's growing opposition. Like, people cannot understand what is going on. It's missing some basic historic features like center chimney. I mentioned this 5 times. There's just nobody's taking it seriously. And then the house new house comes with something that is supposed to look like an extension to the house. Like, I just want to remind people that I think there is a reason why some of the historic homes have gotten extensions allowed, right? There's a fine balance, as I said in my letter, between having a community, right, where people are willing to invest here and can live here and live in some modern standards, but at the same time pay the price of preserving the homes, right? And so, yeah, extensions sometimes are applied and granted, but to allow a new house, okay, to not have basic historic features, but to be built with an extension only because the lot is so screwed up that nothing can be fit, or nobody's willing to build what would be an appropriate smaller home that we all call for. I just, it's so frustrating that this big house keeps coming back month after month, okay? And it makes no sense to me. I mean, we who live here, I mean, we depend on the protection of this district And so I really urge you to think about that. Okay, that like this is the community who lives here. Okay, who breathes and choose to invest. If we allow beach area type construction up here, you know, with just going by what town plan and zoning is saying, we have no historic district. I mean, and that's what's at stake here, right? So, you know, I read there's violations for this and that
Excuse me,
coming up on
Johan.
the agenda, but
Excuse
let's be clear, this is a problem. So
Excuse me, Johan.
please deny this application.
You finished?
Yes, I'm finished. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Johan. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak? Okay. Brian, do you have any comments? You want to
I'm
comment?
gonna let Chris answer some of the questions first, and then I can just touch on some of the only couple of design issues that were there.
Chair, members of the commission, good to be before you here tonight. Chris Russo with Russo and Rizzio LLC, offices at 10 Sasko Hill Road in Fairfield, Connecticut, on behalf of the applicant. Just want to respond to some of the comments and state a few things for the record. And I know this is, you know, obviously a repetition of what I've said at previous hearings, but as this is a new application, it has to be stated again. Again, this is an approved building lot. It is fully compliant to the zoning regulations for the town of Fairfield with respect to lot area, minimum square, and lot frontage. Under the regulations, the applicant has a right as a permitted use to a single-family dwelling and a detached accessory garage. Both structures, as shown on the plan submitted, are fully conforming to the regulations, including with regards to coverage, floor area, and setback. So this structure is permitted to be built under the regulations. We are here, as you are well aware, because its location in a historic district, which requires a certificate of appropriateness for new construction, which is permitted in a historic district, that is visible from the public way. The regulations do provide for this type of situation when you have new construction on a lot such as this. Specifically, and this is in Chapter 2 of your handbook, regarding new construction, it states that new buildings constructed on a subdivided lot or on a lot that has not had buildings or structures since the creation of the historic district, which is what this lot would fall under. It has not had a building or structure since the creation of the historic district. The handbook continues that it shall be designed to retain as much as possible of the visual historic streetscapes. But then the next line says that the established rhythms in location along the street may not be appropriate for replication in the case of new construction on land without any relevant history of buildings or structures. So the handbook specifically calls out for the situation that we have with this application and with this lot, and provides the guidance, and I specifically reference the setback issue because that's the one that keeps coming up, is that the established rhythms in location may not be appropriate for replication. We comply with the zoning regulations, but to go back 40 feet would essentially render this property unbuildable, and frankly almost amount to a taking of this property. Much discussion has been made about the property to the north at 952 Old Post Road. According to the town's GIS, that property is 17.5 feet from the street property line. Our principal dwelling is located 30 feet from the street property line. There's also another property at 1005 Old Post Road that has no setback. And there's other dwellings throughout the historic district that have a closer setback. In addition, as seen on the submitted site plan, the proposed dwelling is located 11.5 feet from the side property line with 952 Old Post Road. The town's GIS system places the dwelling at 952 Old Post Road 29 feet away from that same side property line. So that's a distance of 40 feet in between the dwelling that we're proposing and the dwelling at 952 Old Post Road. And as shown in the rendering, it's clearly not an obstruction to seeing that dwelling at 952 Old Post Road. With regards to some of the specific comments from the public, and actually, Brian, if you can pull up the site plan, can you pull up the site plan for us? The issue with going back to 40 feet is that it leaves so little area to develop. There is a regulation in this zone for minimum floor area, which we would not be able to achieve if we had to go back to 40 feet. So we have designed a structure that would be compliant with the regulations. And something like a waiver is not required. You know, the argument that we can go and get a waiver, well, that it's just not, those things aren't, one, they're not guaranteed at all. We don't feel it's appropriate in this case. And so again, if a 40-foot distance setback, which is not required by your handbook, but if that was imposed on us, we would not be able to comply with the regulations and would not be able to build, even though we are permitted to build a dwelling on this site. I think there was a comment regarding the application not being complete. Under your handbook, this application is complete. An application form has been submitted. Site plans have been submitted, drawings and photographs. Another commenter said that there was the option to acquire another property. That's not what's before this commission. It's only for 920 Old Post Road. The prospect of possibly obtaining another portion really can't be a justification for denial of this application. A number of commenters also talked about this approval creating precedents. That's not how land use approvals work. You can't just take it and then somebody could go use it for another property, another location. These applications are determined due to specific site conditions. And so there's no legal basis in taking this, if an approval was granted on this application, to then go taking it and saying, well, you have to approve that application because you approved this application on 920 Old Post Road. There's no basis to do that. And as I stated with regard to this chapter 2 in the handbook regarding new constructions, we do meet the standards of the handbook. There are plenty of dwellings, including right on this section of Old Post Road, 952 Old Post Road and 1005 Old Post Road, that have a lesser setback than we do. I know there's ones further down that also are within 30 feet. And I think the rendering, particularly the rendering that Brian did looking at from an angle, and the fact that we're 40 feet away from the other dwelling at 952 Old Post Road, show that what we're proposing here does not block that house. You will still get a great view. You can't even see that house right now from that angle because of the landscaping that's currently there. So the development of this property will actually open up the viewscape to that house. So for those reasons, and I don't know, Brian, if you have anything to add to that, but we respectfully request approval of this application. My client has made changes upon changes to come back here. We appreciate the feedback of the commission to improve this project. We think it has. We appreciate the hours that the commission, the time the commission has spent coming into the site and giving us feedback. We think it's made a better project, but we also believe that it's time for this project to be approved. It is in accordance with your handbook. It's in accordance with the historic district. and it's in accordance with the zoning regulations. So with that, we'd respectfully request your approval. Happy to answer any further questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just had two very quick things. One was, and I hope I'm not speaking out of line for the Montanis here, but the comment keeps coming up that they don't respect the historic district and they're not taking this seriously. That couldn't be further from the truth. Obviously, it's well documented that they are moving back into the neighborhood from already owning a house on Old Post Road because they appreciate and love the neighborhood. So I just, the nonsense of they're not taking this seriously, or myself and Chris are not taking this seriously is completely crazy. But in terms of, there was only one real design question within those letters. One was basically the straight roof line and the side addition, making it look like an addition. That, and I hope the board would back me up, was actually a suggestion from the board to break up that roof line in previous applications. So that's why that's there. But yeah, other than that, I'm open for any other questions, but I think we've reached the point here.
Thank you, Brian. I'll go around the room again one more time to see if any of the commissioners have additional questions. Darren, any additional questions?
I have no additional questions.
Okay. Art?
None for now. Thank you.
Okay. George?
Yeah, no questions. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. Jim?
No questions. No
All right.
questions.
Alyssa?
No, thanks. I'm all set.
Okay, we have no further questions from the commission. So at this time, the hearing is closed. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, we'll move on to deliberations. Considering first application, Kyle and Alana Griswold, 298 Harbor Road in Southport for property located at 298 Harbor Road in Southport for a proposed landing and stairs, modified stone wall. Motion? Alyssa, you're voting on this one?
Yes.
I'll make the motion to approve A as presented.
I'll second the motion.
Discussion? No more discussion? Okay, ready to take a vote then? All in favor of this motion? Okay, any against? No. Abstentions? No. Motion passes unanimously. Second item is Rob and Carrie Manning, 1130 Old Academy Road in Fairfield for a property located 1130 Old Academy Road in Fairfield for A, new pool and spa, B, pool equipment, C, masonry wall and steps at pool area and terrace, D, outdoor fireplace, E, pergola, F, automated driveway gate, pedestrian gate and fence, G, repaved driveway, H, removed garden wall, steps, arbor to be relocated. Can I get a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve A through H as presented.
Second the motion.
Proceed motions to approve A through H. Darren seconds. Discussion? No questions? Okay, ready to vote. All in favor? Opposed? Unopposed? Jim, you're voting on that one? Jim? Go ahead. You're muted.
Microphone.
No, I'm voting on number 3, not
No.
Road.
That's yours.
You're voting on
That's
number
yours,
2. How are you voting?
I vote in favor of it if I'm eligible to vote.
Okay, thank you. So the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. George, you're voting on the third item.
Yep, I got it. I'm on it. Yep.
1386 Hillside Road for property located on 1386 Hillside Road. 2A, replace existing non-original 20th century windows with painted with thermal pane windows with simulated divided lights.
I'll make your
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second it, Georgina.
Rosina makes the motion. George, your second. George,
Yep, I seconded. Yes.
thank you. Discussion? No discussion. Okay. Then we'll vote on it. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed? No abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Last item on the agenda, Alyssa and Jim will be voting. Okay,
I'm abstaining.
and Rosina's abstaining. Okay, Jim? Go ahead,
Hi, how are you?
Jim.
Am I voting on this one?
You're voting on this application. Are you okay? Okay. All right. David and Tina Montani, 920 Old Post Road in Fairfield for property located at 920 Old Post Road in Fairfield for A, remove existing shed, basketball court, B, construct new single family house and detached garage, C, install a new asphalt driveway, D, install a new fence along front property, E, install new brick stoop and walkways, and F, install new AC condensing units.
Adam, this is Art, and I'll make a motion to approve. Did you say the last item was F or E?
Was F, A through F?
Yeah, so I will make a motion to approve items A through F as presented.
Okay.
Elizabeth?
We have a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay, discussion?
I'll start, Adam. The reason I made the motion to approve all of those items is basically, I think Attorney Russo summarized it best. You know, notwithstanding these very legitimate and well intentioned comments from the public. First of all, the setback issue, shouldn't even be up. It's not our bailiwick. And secondly, I do agree with Mr. Russo that given that that minimum, this is denied, and we can get into the design elements. That may very well, be a constitutional taking, and no municipal body can do that with regard to a private property right. I realize that's a legal argument, but I just want to set the stage of what we're being asked to do here, because I do think we're all taking it seriously. We could certainly discuss the roof line issue. I do remember us last time making that suggestion. So the reason I made that motion, in summary, and I know everyone's going to have an opinion, is they've met their burden of showing that the proposed plans are historically relevant. So they should get the certificate of appropriateness.
Anyone else?
For those of us who don't have a law degree, could you explain what a constitutional taking is, just so I understand all the ins and outs?
You can't take a government can't take a citizen's private property without just compensation.
Right. No, I
just
get
like
that, like
zoning.
the Fifth Amendment, but I guess I'm unclear.
Basically, you can't take away someone's property right, and they do have a right to develop a private piece of property for something that's been zoned for it,
Gotcha. Okay.
without compensating them. Again, I think that a lot of time was spent on that, and that's from my perspective. I'm not sure we can do that. Again, the issue with the design elements, that's certainly fair game, and I'd love to hear everyone else's opinion on that.
Mhm. And just a follow-up question, because I didn't see anywhere in the handbook that there is there is a required setback from the road in the handbook. Did I miss something?
No, there's not.
Okay.
The times when things like that come into effect for HDCs, if it's clearly part of the description in the original district, but this is a very early district. When was this district listed? 1970s?
60s.
60s. So the descriptions back at that time weren't as elaborate as they are now. For instance, if I were writing a district now, I would talk about this streetscape very specifically and what's characteristic elements and characteristic features of this district, so that when things like this come up, there's clear set boundaries for what is to be discussed, what are defining features of that district. Setback can be one. There's other things that have come up that I don't believe are within our jurisdiction, like talking about land swaps and things like that. We can't discuss that. It's not within our jurisdiction, but the design elements are, and I believe setback can be one of them if it's outlined within the district.
I mean, and with regards to the design of the building, first of all, as a new building, it doesn't have to be any specific historic style. They're not required to build a colonial or any style. They can build something that's a variation of colonial, have aspects of that, but there's no requirements for them to build a colonial house. That has to be over 4, and not look like it has an addition, like some of these people were complaining about. The aesthetics of the house that looks like it has an addition, which, I mean, that's their choice if they want to do that as a design element. And with respect to the setbacks, I mean, it says in the handbook that street setbacks and lot placement should not necessarily mirror existing buildings. I mean, it's basically saying it doesn't have to, which is that the whole argument is that all the other buildings are 40 feet, so that's the setback for the street. When our handbook says that it doesn't necessarily have to mirror the existing buildings with respect to setback. And in this case, it can't. And structures should be designed to protect historic views of such existing buildings and structures. And that's the attempt, I think, is that they're trying to, I mean, they've done everything they can, given the lot size and what they want to build, to preserve the view of, the house next to it. Right?
I agree. I think you said it as a little better than I was trying to say it, Mr. Chairman. And then, just some of the other comments, I didn't give them that from the public. I didn't really give them much weight. I mean, somebody mentioned something about well, they're taking away a basketball court, and a basketball court is more relevant than a new construction. Well, I looked up during the presentation, when basketball was invented, and it was the turn of the 20th, or it was like around 1900, and that's after the historic district. So
I think what they were trying to, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I just, I wouldn't give those comments much weight in determining whether or not this plan is appropriate for our purposes.
I think in that with I understand what you're saying 100%, and I'm not trying to argue against it. I think if I if I understood correctly, that the neighbors are saying it's more relevant because that lot was always for leisure and recreation because it was a garden. And I think that they are looking at the basketball court as being more in line with that historic use than a residential use in this kind of capacity, is my takeaway from that. So I think I think that argument I kind of understood.
But just to be clear, this is a lot zoned for residential use now.
Yes, but I think the argument is that historically it always used to be a garden for one of the properties.
Right. Okay. Got it.
Well, it was really just a backyard. Someone did try and say it was garden and therefore it should have a garden, whatever. It was a backyard that has a a sports court in it. And I 100% understand why the neighbors across the street, because they're going to see it's going to be right in their face. And right now, all they have is bushes to look at. They have a hedge, and if this gets approved, they're going to have a house there. And I understand that would be something they want to fight. They're getting everyone that they can to sign up and fight against it. Whether they care about it or not, I'm sure they're on that list of people who are signing the petition. But I think, from our perspective, and our job is to decide whether it's appropriate, inappropriate, based on our handbook. And I'm having a hard time finding reasons to deny it, because obviously listening to the neighbors, but they pick and choose. They cherry pick the words and the sentences they want to pull out of the handbook, and they're not necessarily reading the next sentence. That is more descriptive and offers some latitude to the situation.
That's right. And the stuff about slippery slopes and creating precedents, I mean, that's why you have a district, and that's why this commission and the commissions that'll come after us. I mean, we do this all the time. We're tasked with the town of making the call on what's appropriate, and we certainly have the ability in any commission that comes after us to do that.
How many letters did you get, Adam? Do you have a count?
For just this one or for all of them total?
Well, I have this time I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 2 of them are direct neighbors. I'm sorry, 7. Like 2 of the letters coming from one household. One's from Jack Franzen, who's I think he hasn't been involved in this conversation until just now. One's from the Old Post Road Area Association, because the neighbors have asked them to get involved. And of course, they have a petition of 30 people or 20 people or whatever, which is, that just signing that
all the
one
way
letter.
down the Post Road, down to 458, it's, the objections do not seem to be restricted to immediate neighbors by any means. Am I voting on this one, by the by?
Yes, yeah. You are. Viewing James whiteboard. Yes, you are.
That much public sentiment against it, it's hard to stiff arm that. I find. I feel the same way I felt about the objections to the modifications to the shoreline at the end of Harbor Road. There were just an overwhelming objection of the community there, and I had to vote along with those objections.
And you know, Jim, we have taken these you know, for every single application that they've submitted, it's been the exact same, you know,
Yeah.
argument that they presented to us. And you know, I've tried to see their point of view. I just, you know, I don't think that they're 100% accurate. With, you know, they have some concerns. I get it, but I mean, you know, they don't want change. Is what it comes down to.
Appropriateness is a subjective thing. I mean, I believe that.
It is somewhat subjective, for sure.
Yeah, but is there anything in the historic handbook that they are violating, in your opinion?
No. Uh-oh.
Okay.
Can someone refresh my memory? I think we voted on this back in July. It was the last time. On what was it that we denied in July that they've changed for today? Was it just the roof line, or was there something else?
They had a major change back earlier, just the time before last, when they asked for an on-site meeting with some commissioners. I think, I'm guessing that was back in the spring, maybe March or April.
There's been
No, it was
several
later than April.
pre-apps. I believe.
But I'm finding it difficult to stiff arm that much public objection. I was But Adam's point that they are not violating anything in the historic district handbook, that's an important fact.
Jim, you're saying.
I was trying to remember what it was that we denied the very last time that was in violation of the handbook that they
The last time we asked them to give a better visualization of the streetscape, which they've done.
Right. Was that it?
And I cannot remember.
There were several things why it was denied the last time it came before us, which I don't think was last month. It was the month before. One of them was the streetscape, the context in situ, both of which they gave us this time. And then I believe, and Adam can speak more to this, that there were some inconsistencies within the application and the drawings that needed to be worked out, because we were concerned about what exactly we were voting on and approving relative to the drawings. But Adam can speak to that, because I don't remember exactly what those inconsistencies were. He's the one who brought that up.
That's right, Darren. Nor do I. But they were inconsistencies among the drawings. You're right. Yep.
Sorry, I got disconnected somehow.
No problem. Alyssa was just asking why it got denied the last time.
Oh. So, are we ready to take a vote on this, or do we need more discussion?
I think we're ready.
Okay. Well, let's take a vote on it. All in favor of the motion to approve A through F for 920 Old Post Road? All opposed? Abstentions? All right, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. That was a tough one, I think.
Thank you, Adam.
Moving on. We need to approve minutes from the September meeting and the October meeting. So September meeting was here. Jim Bohan, George Clark, myself, and Darren were here. And for the October meeting, Rosina, is Rosina back? Hi, Rosina. So for the October meeting, Rosina, Art, and Darren were there.
So there's two we're approving? Or
Yes, September and October.
do we have to do them as separate motions?
Yes, I think you should, yeah, do them separately.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve, which is the first one, September minutes as submitted.
I'll second that.
Okay, George seconds. All in favor? I wasn't there, so I can't. Yes, I wasn't. Opposed?
You were there.
Okay, motion passes.
I'll make a motion to approve October's minutes as submitted.
I was not at the October meeting, so.
And neither was I.
No, Art and Rosina were.
I'll second the October meeting.
Okay. All in favor? Okay, motion passes. Chairman's report, repairs. 95 and 101 Arbor Road, replace asphalt shingles in kind. 720 Old Post Road, replace shingles, front porch trim and steps damaged in fire in kind. 612 Pequot Avenue, replace existing garage door in kind. And 506 Jennings Road converts 9 existing second floor windows to double pane insulated glass. Violations, 360 Old Post Road, removal of siding, window and door. It's covered over, so it's hard to tell. Any discussion on handbook tonight, or?
It's out of my
I have a
hands.
question.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
All right, go ahead, Rosina.
I have a question about the repairs. For the 506 Jennings Road, was there a reason why converting windows doesn't require a certificate of appropriateness? And it's more of a repair?
They just replaced the window panes with insulated glass.
Okay.
So they're not changing the windows, they're just replacing the glass.
Was the glass historic?
Okay.
I mean,
It's
obviously,
single pane.
it could be historic.
I meant, was it original to the house?
Yeah, probably. She was approved to have the lower windows done previously. So it's a continuation that she's.
I don't think those windows are the original ones to the house. But if they are, which I don't think they are, they're taking out historic material and replacing it.
Yeah, I mean, but we also, I'll issue repair orders to just replace a window. You know, maybe if it's, as long as it's not changing in appearance, you know, it's a repair. It's replacing, it's no different than replacing clapboard siding. Taking it off historic, you know, material and replacing it with new material, but
Yeah, if the material's in kind, though, I mean, if you're replacing,
yeah,
you know, a post with AZAC, a wooden post with AZAC, that would have to come before us.
Oh,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah, in kind, everything in kind.
Okay.
But you're right. I think if it was like historic glass, but you know,
That sounds like a repair.
I think it should be repaired myself, but I understand where some people might think, it'd be best to keep, especially if it's a hand-blown glass.
Yeah, if it was bullseye glass on an old colonial, but doesn't sound like it.
No. Anyway, you were saying with the handbook?
It's out of my hands. I've done all the changes
Okay.
needed to,
So
but
as
I
Chris,
think,
Chris was doing some of the property stuff. Yeah.
yeah, and then the maps have to be re-examined, which is, I can't do. I don't have the software.
All right.
And that has to be done after Chris checks all the properties.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, he's talked to me about it.
Did we ever get resolution of the, which is it with foliage? Is it, can we consider it not there, or rather, must we consider it not there, or is it an allowable screen?
I think it's both.
You were
I
going to
believe we
talk,
can require it as screening, but when we're
consider it.
looking at changes, we have to pretend that there's no screening there. Or there's no, we can't take into account landscaping.
Yeah, or screen
We're looking at changes.
or anything like that.
yeah, but
Sorry,
there was a contradiction in the original handbook.
No, that was a point of order that I was trying to understand, because I think it's a fine line, and I just wanted to make sure that everything was up to par. But screening can be required by the HDC in perpetuity.
Yeah, and it's typically for condensing units and generators and things of that nature.
But page 62 seemed to contradict page 2. And page 2 says, in evaluating visibility from the public way, the commission will consider the view as it would be without any screening created by trees, bushes, shrubs, plantings, or any other temporary visual obstructions. Then page 63 says, the commission may require
resolve this
screen
issue?
items that, if visible from the public way, would be considered inappropriate. So those two things seem to contradict each other.
Didn't we address this issue when we were going through the handbook? Or I think it's been addressed, Jim.
Okay.
In
And
the revised handbook.
okay,
The wording anyway.
you were going to talk with the legal office about it.
About whether we can stipulate screen.
How to resolve these two seemingly contradictory statements.
I mean, if I go, are you asking if I was going to find out legally whether we could stipulate screening?
Well, on page 2, we're saying we may require planting to screen. And
you can't consider it when determining a certificate of appropriateness or something.
right. Page 62 says may require planting to screen items. And that's on page 62. On page 2, it says commission will consider without any screening. So one says you can consider screening and the other says you can't.
The one says we have the authority to screen if we deem it appropriate.
Okay, may require planting.
But we can't, but we can't consider screening when we're looking at like an addition or an aspect of the house that we're considering for a certificate of appropriateness. But
That's right. We resolve that. You can't just say, well, I can't see it, so it's not within our purview. So I agree, Adam.
Okay, if you guys agree, I'm fine with that.
It doesn't sound inconsistent. One says you can't you can't consider, a dense leaves from a tree that's blocking something,
Right.
from a, so I think that's fine the way it is.
Moving on to new business.
Adam, do you want to talk about the house on Old South?
Yeah, we can. Let's go through this, and at the end, then afterwards we can
Yeah.
discuss it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you.
515 Old Post Road, the pull off and Belgian block violation. I think someone, to Rosina, did you say that they took that one out? I thought I
No,
drove by
that,
there.
this is 515. I mentioned that it was the one, I think 121 Old Post Road is the one that fits their
Yes,
violation.
This is 515.
Yeah.
So anyway, there are three violations that were issued, which I have not heard from the homeowner. 515 Old Post Road for Belgian block, 14 Willow Street for the columns, which we did hear from them, but they have been back in months. But I haven't heard from her at all. And then there's 683 Pequot Avenue where they removed the guardrails up on the Willow Walk, which I haven't heard from them either. So the question I'm asking the commission is do we think it's appropriate to take the next step and intervene on the property and the whole thing just to get them to?
Have we reached out to them to check?
They received letters of
status?
violation. They've received letters of violation, all of them.
Okay.
14 Willow Street was the only one they did come to address the situation, but it was months ago, and then they never came back. So,
I remember there was a lawyer involved.
yeah, and the violation, it says 30 days, and then the other two, they haven't even responded. So, it's similar to the Beach Road where they haven't responded. They were issued, they had the lien put on their property, and they were issued fines. I still haven't heard from them, but at least it's on the land records now. So I think my recommendation is to proceed that route with these three violations, and I just wanted to get the approval of the commission before doing that. So I guess if you just say yes or no, or
Fine with that.
I'm fine. I'm fine with it. All right. I think you've done what you need to do.
I don't want to do it, but it's like it doesn't seem like anything else is working. So
Yeah.
How long ago did you? I'm sorry. How long ago did you issue the violations?
more than 30 days ago.
Okay.
Much more. It's been some are several months,
Months.
or just a couple months.
Quick
Usually
question,
when
515
these letters get issued, they will reach out to me and try and resolve the situation.
So Adam, 515 Old Post Road had never come in front of the commission as a violation. This is the first time that I hear of this address. Do you think this is the correct address and it's not the 121 Old Post Road, which is closer to Turney, which is the one that they removed the Belgian blocks?
Is it the pullout in front of the house?
It is the house that the same developer that worked on the Sherman parsonage restored.
I think it's a different. I think it's 515. Let me look.
Because I had never heard of 515 Old Post Road as a violation before.
Is 515 the
agenda.
one you can barely see? It's like all the way in the back.
Yeah, no, it's
Exactly.
515. 515. Yeah, this violation was issued in July. Yeah, they installed a pull off in front of the house. A parking pull off.
That's not 515. That it's 121 or so. It was the other address that I sent you. Double check that, because I believe 515 had never come up as a violation in front of the commission.
Maybe that's why then. If I got the address wrong. Look. I got
And if it's in fact 121, I walked by there the other day and they had removed every single one of the Belgian blocks and left it as asphalt to grass.
No, it's definitely 515. It's like across from the Bhutanis.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, it's across the street from the Bhutanis.
Okay.
It's literally like you drive in the driveway and then the pull off is to the left.
Okay.
And it's like two cars wide with Belgian block around it.
Okay.
See if I can hang on. I have some pictures somewhere, but I couldn't find them. So, okay, so I'm gonna proceed.
It's not this house.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, 121, it's the Sousa's, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, no, it's not that house.
Okay.
It's a different house.
Because this is the one that had the Belgian block.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
No, it's different. I'm not talking about along the driveway. They just did this pull off.
Okay.
On the block. I mean, the pull off alone, they had to come. It was a new pull off. It wasn't
Okay.
existing. Anyway, so I'll proceed with that. And then the last thing, recommended that we put together a nominating committee for officers for next year. I mean, we've never done that before. I don't know if it makes sense. It's always awkward doing it during the meeting, but I feel like we don't change the officers too much. How do we feel about that? Do we think we need that or not?
Nominating committee? I've never heard of that.
I don't think you need it.
You don't think we need it? I think you're muted already.
Just said I agree with my friend George.
Okay. Okay. So it's nominating committee. I thought I'd bring it up just because she mentioned it, and it seemed like it could be a good idea, but it seems anyway. George, you want to talk about the Old South?
Okay, I can start the conversation. The question is the house that was in the lot that was moved. I think we were all presented a plan by the architect where they said they were gonna clone the original house and build a new house. They ultimately rolled the old one away and are in the process of building a new one. I was at the Sasquatch meeting the other day, and they feel the house is quite a bit massed, much more massed than the old house. It's larger, and there's I don't want to say there's a disturbance within the Sasquatch group about the house. I've talked with a bunch of the neighbors. I think, I don't want to misquote anything, Adam, but I think we were, the presentation that was given to us by the architect was very clear that they were going to build an exact copy. As a matter of fact, there was an extensive conversation, but before they even talked about taking the house down. We're going to build a perfect replica of the house. We're going to put in we want to add a second floor over the garage. We want to add a third floor. And I think when they finally asked the final plan, they asked if they could elevate the house a foot, just to give it some height. I think
What's
those
the
were
address?
the three conditions. What?
75
75 Old South?
Old South.
Yeah.
think it's 75, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have the number in front of me. I
Yeah,
can.
75 Old Town.
So the architect presented the verbal conversation was we approved, actually, before they even took the house down, we approved in a prior meeting the second floor on the garage and the existence of a third bay. I believe that's correct. That was voted on and approved. When they went to do the work, they found out the ground wasn't solid. It was it was built on a swamp, and there was a need to. They finally came back with an engineering report, said they really need to build a new foundation, which subsequently led to taking the house down, which led to the option of moving it away, and building a new house. The new house is now in construction. If anybody's been down Old South, to me it's a much more massed house. It's closer to the road. I don't know. I didn't see the plans, Adam. Maybe you did the footprint, but the verbal communication to all of us on the commission was we're building an exact replica. What we have today is not an exact replica. It's much more mass. The windows are bigger. The house is a lot. It's closer to the road by maybe 8 to 10 feet. Maybe I haven't measured it. But the plans agree with what they built. So there's an inconsistency between, and correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, because I think you did the analysis. I think what they said they were going to do and what they presented were two different stories. And we agreed with what they said. We may not have tied out the plans doing the old house to the new, which was maybe our fault as commissioners. But we agreed. What we agreed to was what they said they were going to do, and now we're sitting with a house that's a lot of people in the neighborhood, me maybe included, are a little bit unhappy with the result. So that's our conditions. Adam, did I say everything wrong?
No, I think that's pretty accurate. I feel like, and I went back and looked at the meeting again and the last presentation, and he clearly said, Tanner White said that they're going to rebuild the house. I mean, and he basically said it as we're going to rebuild it as it is, but he wasn't very forthcoming with what changes he was going to make. He said there might be a few small changes, but I got the impression that it was really going to be they were trying to replicate the house. They weren't trying to massage it or anything like that. I was under the impression they're going to replicate it. And of course, I don't know. I think the problem is that we don't know what the dimensions on the house were, the existing house, unless you go down there and measure them. How big the windows are and what the exposure on the clapboard is. So when they show us drawings, we're going to assume that
we actually do.
Must be
around the
as-built,
corner.
right?
We can go measure it on the house that's there. I mean, the house is still there, right? It's just
no. I know, but I'm just saying, going into the application process, he's showing us drawings of the house that they want to build, and he's telling us that we're rebuilding the existing house is what we want to do. We want to rebuild the existing house, and we're like, okay, great, you can rebuild the existing house, but looking at the window sizes on the plan in elevation, how am I to know that the one that he has drawn isn't what's existing? I don't know what the existing, and he didn't show us existing elevations versus, I guess the original plan was supposed to have the existing house, but I didn't notice any difference between the existing house with the garage that he was proposing and the new house and the garage, Now you look at them, they're close enough together where you can see them and they're totally just the scale of one versus the other, or it's very different.
plus the location, plus moving it closer to the road.
Plus moving it closer to
that
the
was
road,
clear
which
at
he
all.
also did mention, but we should have, it was on the plan and we should have caught that,
Yeah.
but he wasn't forthcoming with that information. So anyway, if anything, a lesson for the commission that we need to be more vigilant when it comes to situations like this.
Yeah, it is the people at Sasquatch basically said we should, if it wasn't built consistent with what we approved, we should put a stop work order in. I understand that's radical, and I understand their position, but
That's too radical.
there's some very upset people,
Yeah, I don't blame them.
and they're not happy with HTC.
So this is part of the reason why I proposed when we were revising the handbook, the final inspection.
Yeah.
Because final inspections always catch these kind of things. I mean, this is an extreme instance, right? But
Final inspection after the house is built is kind of
no, that's why I'm saying this is an extreme example.
I'll go back to the fact that if we had an administrator within HTC, that would be their job to have validated this before it was ever even approved. And that goes back to where I was a long time ago. I was told we had a solution without a problem, and I'm suggesting that we do have a problem because we're not full-time people, and we're not being as diligent as we could be.
With all due respect, I was that full-time person for a municipality, and it wasn't my purview to double check every single plan.
But it could have been.
There was no way.
Okay, I disagree, but okay.
I'm not. I mean, part of that was the facilitation between the HDC department, planning and zoning, and building.
Within HDC, there could be somebody that catches these things or manages this area. If it was on the plans and we didn't see it, that's shame on us.
Right.
And I'm saying that didn't need to be that could have been managed.
But here's the thing, George. I feel like we were, I think a little bit by the architect. I don't think he was forthcoming with us, and I don't think it's very difficult to look at a drawing and have them say this is the existing house and we're rebuilding it. And how are we to know what the dimensions of that house are? We don't know how high it is.
But a lot of times when we do a construction, Adam, and every time you get the current and the proposed next to each other. And if we had said we want the current and the proposed, we would have seen it.
You're right.
I mean,
we should have had the existing house and then the proposed house, and so we could see them side by side and see the differences.
That's my point.
And we didn't do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's too bad.
And I'll go one step. Sasquatch has kind of asked us to come to their meeting and talk a little bit about HDC and process, which I was happy to suggest that I'd be gladly be part of that with whomever Adam you feel deemed appropriate. But they would like to they'd like to talk about HDC and process, and they'd like to help us because they're a strong advocate of HDC. They're just unhappy about this issue.
So isn't Adam? This is an honest question, so please don't shoot me for asking.
Never.
Is there any recourse that we do have? I mean, he's on record as saying he's doing an exact replica. If I remember correctly, that house was a new build in the 90s, so there should be as built. Is there any legal recourse that we have, or is that something we can ask the town attorneys when there's obviously a discrepancy between what he said he was going to do and what's actually being built?
I mean, I doubt it, but I mean, that's a good question.
I think we ought to go to the attorney and ask him.
I can ask that.
And Adam, I appreciate, and by the way, Chris Milligan's a nice guy, but at the end of the day, the architect works for Chris. I don't want to put this all on Chris. I mean, all on the architect. The owner had to know what was going on too.
Right.
And if he didn't, shame on him. But I mean, if I were writing the checks, I would certainly know. So I don't think it's all can be put on the back of the architect.
Fair enough.
I don't think that's appropriate.
I mean, also we have to take into consideration the fact that the house isn't done yet. So, I mean, it's at its ugliest, worst stage right now, where it's just plywood and, there's the front porch isn't on, and it's just, the scale will come down, as the trim goes on, and
Not going to be
it's
built
painted,
the way it was
so
represented.
it's not going to be bad as it looks now. So, I mean, I just want to throw that out there. I know everyone's upset because it looks terrible right now. It looks gigantic.
Yeah, I think that it's the closest to the road, which amplifies it. That 10 feet or whatever it's been, that just makes it the bigger. If I can.
Yeah, I mean, I have to go back.
Can I say something?
Sure.
You guys are discussing exactly the same thing that you guys just approved. The setback
I was waiting for
from
that.
a property in a different district.
Well, it's a little different. It's a little different.
It is exactly the same thing. My apologies, but it is exactly the same thing in a different historic district.
Well, I have to disagree with you.
If no one agrees with me, then we are wrong as a historic district commission.
Okay. Anyway, back to the old 75 Old South. I mean, I'll have to go back and look at the meetings again and the drawings to see what was said and what was presented from the beginning to the end.
Remember in the earlier meeting before they finally presented the plan, when the architect went through the whole thing about my vision is to have a house that looks just like this house, and he went through the whole thing. He kind of forgot to mention that he was going to take down the house, and we went through the whole conversation. We finally asked him, "You mean you're going to demolish the current house?" Oh yeah. We're going to take it down and rebuild a new one. And that's when we kind of put the brakes on and said, "Wait a minute, come back with plans and why." Right? I mean, the whole representation was we're going to do exactly what we have today. That's the plan. And that's
Yeah, I thought it was going to be the footprint, same footprint.
Yeah. I'm with you. So it wasn't in one meeting. It was actually in more than one that he went down this path.
I'll go back and look at the meetings and the notes and
I
the drawings.
think approaching the attorney is something that should be done.
Well, like I said, let me go through the application first. I mean, I don't want to bring this on the attorney if we approve something that was clearly, what was approved.
Yeah.
Because if that's the case, then we have no leg to stand on. It's like,
Well, yeah, it's true.
I mean, we might want to do a training with the attorney anyway. A lot of historic district commissions do yearly trainings with the attorneys, not only in jurisdiction, but points of order, Robert's rules, all that kind of stuff. And I think seeing some of the applications, and maybe I should have brought this up earlier in these discussions for previous applications. I think I brought it up during the handbook too. I think it's important that we go through those as a commission so that we're all on the same page and know where our jurisdiction lies.
But there was a Robert's Rule presentation provided by the town of Fairfield a few months ago. No one from the Historic District Commission, except for me, attended.
Okay, I didn't see anything about it, and and I will take that on. I've had a lot going on, so I get that, but the attorney meeting can be about more than just that.
Right.
Definitely, yeah.
I mean, at Westport, they went through one every single year on various things, so it changed every year. But I think it's important.
Mm-hmm. And along those lines, I think we need, as a historic district commission, to show the people that are presenting a little bit of respect, because as a commission, some of us are talking on the phone, some of us are looking at our phones, some of us are turning the videos off. And if it was in a board meeting, if you turn your video off, that is exactly the same thing as if you walk out of the room. And you shouldn't be allowed to vote or participate if one is doing that. And my apologies, but that happened throughout the last item in our agenda today.
And I know I did that because my son came in naked, so I had to turn off my video because that would have been inappropriate. He's 5. So I apologize for that because I know you're pointing the finger partly at me.
No,
You're
not the only one. But Regina,
There were multiple occasions, people turning off their cameras, people on the phone, and people looking at their phone, not really engaged in the Historic District Commission presentation. And that, for me, it's disappointing.
Regina, excuse me, but in my case, I was not voting on the last issue. I had no verbal involvement. I wasn't allowed to speak. So I did have to go away from my desk for a minute. That is why I turned off my phone. But I was not participating in that hearing.
But regardless, if we are participating in the meeting, we should be 100% engaged in the meeting that we were appointed as commissioners to participate and be advocates of the historic districts. It's that simple. And I'm sorry I have to say this.
Fine.
Anything else after on that note?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Thank you. All in favor?
Done.
We are adjourned.